Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Port Podcast, episode 266. I'm Benjamin Yoder, here today. Gonna be honest with you, I have not been playing a lot of video games recently. Unfortunately, I've been mostly editing Buddy Mission Bond video. That was kind of like last weekend, and then early last week. That was an intense focus of mine, was editing that Buddy Mission Bond video together. And I don't know if I mentioned it on the last podcast, but like my estimate for just the video editing for Buddy Mission Bond, like literally not talking about writing the script, editing the script, like recording audio, editing the audio, all that stuff. Just editing the video together for me was going to be probably about 20 to 25 hours. It was my expectation, and it seems to be lining up. And I don't know, compared to other people who make videos, how much that is accurate. I think it depends on what you feel like is important when you're editing video together. There's definitely things that I think that I overemphasize at times. So I really focus on like what I'm showing to you based off when I'm saying something in the script. So I will go and dig through, hours and hours and hours and hours of gameplay to find the bit of footage I'm looking for that will fit this one particular line that I want it to fit with. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about that. Unfortunately, it's not one of those things that I can just like write down a timestamp when I'm playing the game. Most of the time, I don't know what I'm gonna need until I'm done with the game and I'm writing the review. And then like when I'm writing it, there are certain things that come to mind, like, oh, I will want to include this kind of thing. So, but sometimes it is something that I just overemphasize. Like I had something where I was like, oh, like I'm talking about how Buddy Mission Bond sometimes has these scenes that they show you, like very in-depth scenes about certain things happening, and it feels completely, irrelevant to what's happening, but it comes back way later in the game to be very important, and there's a very specific reason why this thing happened, essentially. And so like I went on my way to find some footage for that and put it in, and spent however long it was digging up exactly what I wanted to show. But the reality is like unless you've played the game, or B, can read the text on screen. Like, even if you can read the text on screen, if you haven't played the game, you might not know. So unless you've played the game, really, like, you're not going to know why I'm showing that scene for the most part. So, like, sometimes things like that where it's like, I probably didn't need to go out of my way to really edit something like that in. But if you did play Buddy Mission Bond and play through it, then you might better understand why I'm showing that particular thing. So, anyways, just some stuff like that it just is, like, really takes up a lot of time just to edit that particular stuff in. But I think the next, I'm like 15 minutes into the video, so I think the next 7 minutes or so should end around 23-minute mark on that. I think that should only take me to 4 to 5 hours. I haven't really worked on it since because I just need to take a break. I was really burned out. This is essentially 2 videos in one video for me because it's not only a review of Buddy Mission Bond, but also an English guide for Buddy Mission Bond as well. Similar to the PCFX series. So I'm basically attaching 2 of those things onto each other. And I go really in depth about character in Buddy Mission Bond. And I probably go a little too much, maybe a little too verbose at times when it comes to certain things. But because I know I don't have experience really talking about the type of game Buddy Mission Bond is, I wanted to make sure that I conveyed exactly what I was trying to say, and so I erred on the side of say too much than say too little kind of thing. So I don't know if that's going to cause any problems, but for now, I think it's working out pretty all right. I ran the first 7 minutes of the script by a few different people because I was a little concerned about certain things about the script, just things that I feel like I could have tightened up a little bit more, but I'm trying to make the effort to not really obsess over the scripts anymore and focus more on just trying to get something that's complete, readable, and I can go ahead and make a video around. And nobody mentioned the issues that I was pointing out or that I have noticed and stand out to a sore thumb to me because I have been listening to that script and audio recording over and over and over again at this point. So if nobody else is noticing, then I won't worry too much about it. There's a couple different changes I need to make on the back end. It just was some things that I realized after sitting there and listening to it. I was like, I don't go deep enough into this aspect of the game. Let me add in a couple sentences here just to make sure that I'm conveying what I need to convey there. So, but yeah, so really video games did not really happen much. I think I played a Farland Story on one night. And, Farland Story is still just being Farland Story. There's really not a lot to say about that game. It's unfortunate that I just kind of don't care about that game. I will finish it, but it is just something that I'm like, yeah, this is a fine it seems like, and I need to do more research into it. It seems like Farland Story is like a fairly important game to some degree, though. I need to like look at the timeline of things. It seems like it maybe had a pretty big impact on like strategy RPGs at the time. But you know, it kind of feels like that Final Fantasy IV situation where like I understand the importance of Final Fantasy IV and why it needs to exist and why, you know, what parts of Final Fantasy IV what really stood out. But like when I think about it from a modern perspective, when I sit down and play Final Fantasy IV and just trying to enjoy it, I'm just like, there's just not much here for me. like this is like the bare skeleton of what a JRPG should be in the modern day, right? And it's like cool that it reached that point, right? But any other JRPG released after 1991 will do more for me. So yeah. So I did that. I also did some like YouTube background kind of like maintenance stuff. I updated a lot of taggings. I added closed captions to all the premiere videos back to the Rodea the Sky Soldier one. There's a couple of them that I need to like kind of go back and mess with a little more. The Nier and Disaster Day of Crisis one, because I just uploaded my script basically, and I made some changes to the script just to like make it like the text look cleaner. But there are like those videos rely on the game dialogue as well. So I probably need to like go and like insert the game dialogue as being spoken to. So I haven't looked at those videos to see how bad the closed captions might turn out if that's the case. But it's better than nothing, right? So, yeah, so that took way longer than I thought. Updated thumbnails and stuff too. So if you go, look at that, that's all there. Probably more important, honestly, for you guys though, is that, the YouTube homepage now is broken up into different categories now. So essentially you have the premiere videos that are on top. So no longer are they featured videos, they're premiere videos. And then I have featured content, which basically breaks up videos by the type of video. So are they a review? Are they like a commentary on something? Are they, you know, a stream? Are they a podcast? Things like that. So I have sections for that. And I also started up a section for topics. That's kind of shallow at the moment, but it has stuff like, you know, PCFX, Nintendo, Wii and DS, obscure games, import games, things like that. So you can go and select a playlist based off topic. And so it won't worry about the type of content it is. It'll just worry about the topic I set it to, essentially. So there's a couple more in there. I think Games for Girls is in there, as well as like JRPGs, and I probably will add some more in the future, but for now, that's how it's set up. So if you ever like were like, I would love to look through your backlog, but your YouTube was a nightmare to look through before, it is a bit better now. If there's something that you specifically would like me to try to isolate better, let me know. I can definitely look into it and see if I can do that. So yes. So that was a big chunk of this week for me, honestly. That stuff, unfortunately, is like not fun stuff, but it's stuff that I needed to do, and it was long overdue, unfortunately. So I'm glad I finally got that out of the way. So, last week, I mentioned I did not have an internet connection last week, and so I had some stuff I wanted to talk about that were just like off the top of my head that I knew I could talk about, basically. I did look up some stuff on my phone if it was like if I needed it to even talk about it, but I didn't like go deep into each story. Just like, here's the Nintendo Direct stuff and things like that. So I did go through my news, though, once my internet was back and realized, holy crap, there's a lot of things that probably we should talk about on this podcast. So there are a few of these news stories that are going to be fairly old at this point, but they're also niche enough that maybe you have not heard them yet. So, and then there's a couple in here that I think are just kind of things I just want to do some follow-ups on. But one quick correction, though, from last week. I talked about the Monster Rancher Ultraman Kaiju game. Apparently that was already announced for localization, so that is coming to the West. So that is there. Also, I did not look into this fully, but I think it's there. Fishing Spirits, there's the sequel that's coming out now, or at least the new one there's coming out. But apparently the original Fishing Spirits on Switch did get an English release. I forget if it got actually localized or not, or like actually like released in the West, or if it's like an Asian release, but yeah, it sounds like there is English though. So if you do want to play the original Fishing Spirits game on the Switch, that is available. I probably will only play the sequel, honestly, just because it has like a story mode. I don't know if that first game has a story mode or not, honestly, but anyways, if I play it, I don't know. I have not made any commitments to any fishing games at this point in my life yet. So yeah. Couple things I did want to talk about a little bit, though. A couple of these are just follow-ups on some games that we've talked about in the past. Then we'll go into the Patreon, and then we'll get into some more newer news stories. One is One Piece Odyssey. This is that One Piece RPG that we've been following a little bit. I'm very doubtful I will play One Piece Odyssey, to be honest with you, just because I have way too many JRPGs on my plate, and as much as I don't know enough about One Piece, I don't get the impression that One Piece is going to ever be super appealing to me. I don't necessarily say that just based off Unlimited Adventure. Unlimited Adventure seems like a game that doesn't really utilize the One Piece property in terms of a story in any real way. It seems like it's more of just using it for like characters and boss battles and things like that. But anyways, One Piece Odyssey though, this is the turn-based RPG, and I was always kind of curious, like, what kind of battle system are they going to do here within, being turn-based? Is it going to be a simple attack, defend, magic, whatever thing? But they put out a development diary, and it seems like they have a couple of different kind of neat twist to its combat system. One is, it seems like it has a kind of like a Final Fantasy X-ish like character swap mid-battle, so you can swap party members in and out. But probably more importantly, there's basically a kind of a grid system. So when you act with the character, it seems like one character that's like standing in one spot will then move to another, like, I think they're like hexagons technically. You move to that hexagon, and then essentially they'll attack there. It doesn't seem super complicated. I'm going to guess maybe there's like some, this is not a part of what they said, but I'm going to guess there's maybe some like positioning things you can do and things like that. But more importantly, they kind of mentioned some of these more like Valkyria Chronicles style bonus effects that would happen, or even sometimes negative debuff stuff as well. So the example that stood out to me was the one with Sanji. I think he's the blonde guy who, I think he smokes a cigarette in the Japanese version. He's like, he uses a lollipop in the US release. Like if he's like surrounded by female characters on this grid, he apparently can't act anymore. So it's like little silly things like that probably are going to tie into some of the character personalities and character, trivia of that franchise that I think could be pretty cool. But I don't think it's going to be something that's really going to jump out and be for me. They also showed some general like overworld exploration and how you used characters to kind of interact with the world to open up new paths, but it didn't seem like anything too crazy. So anyways, I'm probably going to look at that One Piece game a couple more times, but I think I know what I need to know to say at this point that I probably won't play it. It does look like it has some cool elements to it, but I just think I don't really have a lot of interest in the One Piece brand at this point, specifically. Again, that's not to say anything about Unlimited Adventure, just I just personally don't have any connection to that. And then the combat system seems like it's pretty all right and has like a neat twist to it, but nothing so crazy that I feel like I need to go out my way to play it, I think. So if there's some like new big like reveal about that combat system and some really cool stuff about that, maybe that can draw me back in. But I think at this point, I'm pretty much settled on like, hey, what they've shown so far seems likely that I probably won't end up playing it. But if they can show some more neat mechanics in the combat system, I might be drawn in for that. Also kind of related, again, another RPG I probably won't play is Star Ocean 6. This is the new Star Ocean game. I forget they gave it a subtitle. I forgot what it was and did not write it down, but they gave it a subtitle. Anyways, but this Star Ocean game, one of the neat things about it, if you don't know, the Star Ocean series is like an action RPG kind of thing. I've only ever played Star Ocean 3, and I didn't like it that much. I think I gave it like a 7 out of 10. It's one of the earliest games I reviewed on the website. But the combat system for this game, though, they have like an AP meter, which basically the AP meter drains based off what attacks you use kind of thing. And so the thing that they were really showing off in this was like, if you use certain skills in combat, it actually increases your max AP meter, which means you can utilize other like higher damage moves and stuff like that as your AP meter increases essentially. So you use some lower level moves to essentially work your way up to a higher level move. So I thought that was kind of like a neat idea. They also had some custom combo stuff where you could basically create your own combos within the character customization. I thought that was kind of neat as well. But unfortunately, this game probably just won't be something I get to anytime soon. It's a Tri-Ace game. And I always say that if Monolith Soft went out of business or didn't exist, which at this point, I don't think we're looking at Monolith Soft going out of business anytime soon. They're pretty well off at this point with the Xeno franchise. But say I lost interest in Monolith Soft because all they're doing is pumping out Xenoblade games, and I don't care. anymore. No more Xenoblade in my life. I think Tri-Ace would be the company I'd probably start like cozying up to next with that. A big thing with that, though, is just I have a lot of Tri-Ace games that I have just laying around here that I need to get to. And a lot of like 360 Tri-Ace games. I always wanted to try Infinite Undiscovery and things like that. So there's a lot of games in that thing. JRPGs are just a difficult topic for me, as you guys probably know if you've been listening for a long time. But would really love to play more of them. What would get me to buy Star Ocean 6 at this point? That's a really tough question. Maybe if they announced Star Ocean 6 would be a 20-hour RPG, maybe that would be like enough. I'm like, oh, it's like nice and compact and like I can just go through this game in 20 hours. Cool. I like a good 20-hour RPG. I was thinking about this recently with Torn of the Golden Country. I was like, I love how just compact that game is. It's a great, well-rounded package. Dragon Quest Swords on the Wii is also a great example of that. To some extent, Last Rebellion. I think Last Rebellion has its problems, but you know, I like a good 15 to 20 hour JRPG. I think it's a good length for those sometimes. Not saying every single one. I think there's a lot of benefit from JRPGs that are like, hey, we're going to keep you connected to these characters for 50 to 70 hours at the very least, right? But I think a good 20-hour RPG is a welcome thing from time to time. So Megaton Musashi. This is that level 5 mech game that came out a while ago, I believe on PS4 and PS5 and Switch. Am I remember that correctly? Let me look that up real quick. Yeah, so it was Switch and PS4 and by extension PS5 from there. But yeah, Megaton Musashi, that game is going to go free to play. So this is that mech game, and apparently they had season 1 that came out when they did the original release, and then going forward they're going into season 2, and when season 2 starts, people can download the game and play it, you know, for free from there on. So I don't think that game has English in it, so it is something that if you want to check it out, it's going to be Japanese only. But you know, if it is free to play, then I don't think there's anything keeping you from just logging on to the Japanese eShop and or PlayStation store and just downloading that game and giving it a shot. It looks like a really cool game. It looks kind of like a Gundam Gunpla style game, like the Gundam Breaker series, something like that. So I'm kind of interested in it. I don't know if I'll check it out or not. We'll see. But it's something that kind of jumped out to me. But I think it is. It makes me wonder if that game did not sell well enough, and that's why they're kind of resorting to free to play. I mean, level 5. I don't know. I feel like if level 5 now starts shutting their doors tomorrow, I would not be surprised. Maybe I don't fully understand like how successful they are or aren't. I haven't looked into their financials recently or anything. So, but it just feels like they're down on their luck and they can't get things to work out for them. So, speaking of not understanding things, by the way, this is not on my list, but it's something I've been trying to think about recently and need to do some research into. I mentioned a couple weeks back that like I looked at the media crate charts for Buddy Mission Bond and that it was like, I think it sold like 10,000 copies before it dropped off the media crate charts. So I went and looked at like another Ruby Party game. I forget, it's like Hakuden something 7. It's like the one of their long running series. And I went to see like how long that game, also on the Switch, released in 2020, was how that game sold, and it only sold 16,000 units before it dropped off of Media Crate, and that's the 7th entry in that franchise. So unless there's like some weird thing about like you know, that particular game not selling well in that franchise, I'm wondering if like 10 to 20,000 units is pretty standard for a Ruby Party game. That seems low. Also, that doesn't include digital sales, obviously, as well. So, but I wonder if it's just one of those things that like they make up on the merch on the back half of just like, hey, we got 10,000, you know, people who love these boys, and we are going to milk them dry. So, I wonder if like Buddy Mission Bond is still considered a success, but success in the scope of like what a Ruby Party game would be. So, I don't know that's for sure if that's the case. I need to do more research. If you know about that, let me know. Japanese sales numbers are always weird to me, but Ruby Party stuff probably even more weirder. So let me know if you know about it, but otherwise, I just need to look into it more. It's not going to be something I do for the Buddy Mission Bond video. It's just something I was curious about. So, yeah. And the last thing here before we get into the Patreon question is PSO2 is coming to PS4 worldwide finally. So if you don't remember, PSO2's been out in Japan forever. Finally got localized a couple years back, I think at this point. I think it was around 2020. Microsoft seemed to be like a big pusher of trying to get it out over here. And they got exclusivity on console here in the West for a while. And finally that exclusivity is ending. And the PS4 version will finally be officially localized, which is very cool. It's August 31st is when it's going to come out. I'll be curious to see if this makes me more likely to try it out. I mean, my PC is plenty capable of running PSO2 now. My last PC, the processor in it was too old. And so it just did not it was just incompatible essentially with PSO2. And the new engine with that new Genesis specifically. But being on console, I think like anything that's on console always feels easy for me to pick up and play. So I've been wanting to check out new Genesis, but I think the reality is I would personally prefer to play Portable 2 Infinity, which I still have not done yet. But the fan translation for that is done. I have it installed on my Vita TV as well. So like all you gotta do is plug that in and get going on that. So I feel like I should probably go do that instead, because that's going to have a very definite end versus PSO2, which is still going. But at the same time, PSO2 with new Genesis is still kind of like within the first year or so of its life. So I don't know. I'm always thinking about playing Phantasy Star Online 2. I'm always thinking about playing Final Fantasy 14. I'm always thinking about playing Dragon Quest X. Like, I always dream of playing these MMOs, but I know they don't fit in my life, unfortunately. So I don't know. But still very cool that it's finally getting out. I definitely think the PlayStation audience is a good audience for a Phantasy Star Online game. So I think that definitely is going to expand the reach of that game a bit. And it's free to play too. So, it is a good alternative to Final Fantasy 14, which is not free to play. So it's Patreon time. Patreon, welcome Patreon people and Patreon non-Patreon people. I was about to say Patreon non-people. The Patreon subscribers who are not real people, they're bots. There are 3 people who donate to the Patreon this month. That is Jillian, Paul Daniel, and Discreet. Thank you guys again so much for your support. What are you guys getting this week? Fuck if I know. This week, you're getting a failed attempt at making a TikTok or YouTube short video. If you haven't talked to me much, you might, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast. I think occasionally about like what kind of video game content I could do on TikTok or YouTube shorts. Not necessarily because I think it's like a great way to build an audience, to be honest with you, but I just think the format's kind of interesting. And, as somebody who likes to talk about a great diversity of games, any format that lets me do that, makes me happy. We used to have a segment on the show called Video Game Bits, and I loved doing that segment. And I do not do it anymore because the podcast goes too long now. So I've been thinking about different ways to handle that. But I try to repurpose an article that I wrote a while back ago about a Dojin game, and make it into like a TikTok video. And it actually fit within the requirements of a TikTok video. It did not fit within the requirements of a YouTube short. And I wasn't particularly happy with it either, to be honest. There's a lot of troubles with it. So basically, it's kind of a done, like, I guess you could say, proof of concept, but I do not like the concept that I proofed. So it is no longer happening. But you can watch that video if you subscribe at the $5 bonus level of Patreon, where you get to see bonus content. You get bonus content, you get behind the scenes content. I'm thinking about maybe doing like a behind the scenes video about making the Buddy Mission Bond video, but I will say it will all be in post. I did not record myself making the Buddy Mission Bond video in real time. I don't know if I ever would want to do that. We'll see. I'm not closing it out, but like I just feel weird about recording myself working on something. That's a weird thing, but it might be fun to kind of like walk through the troubles and tribulations of what that making that video was. So we'll see. But for now, there you go. That TikTok video. It's a Dojin game as well. It's called Magic Fantasy. There's an article up on my website if you want to check that out. I'll link in the description if you want to read about Magic Fantasy. But you can see the TikTok weird video version of that on the Patreon for $5. Did you know? You can also, instead, in addition to, if you want to donate $5, you can also, or I guess in not addition, if you don't want to donate $5 for bonus content, you also can do a $3 level, which will get you the ability to ask a podcast question. And this week we have a podcast question from Jillian, and that podcast question is, if the game lets you pick your gender, how do you decide the gender you have in that video game? I jump between making male and female characters. I don't know what the ratio is, to be honest with you. I would say it's probably 50-50, but I think if you went and did the math, it probably isn't. I think there's a couple of things that that make me like, I think there's a couple things that I look at. One is just like, what have I been doing recently? You know, if I've made male characters the last 2 to 3 games I've played on, I'll play a female character instead. But the other thing is how does a game treat its gender with characters? Specifically, you know, male characters often do not get the same level of commitment for like different hairstyles and stuff like that as female characters. And a lot of times female characters in games will get the male option. So it's like it will be a detriment to pick a male character because you get less options to pick as a male character. And I think that's really annoying. I think that's really stupid. I understand why. You know, it's one of those things that you can think about with like, okay, like, and things have changed since then. And like Final Fantasy 14 has like, you know, gender neutral clothing options now. And like you can switch between male and female clothing for both guys and girls. I don't know if it's for the entire set of armor they have, but I think they've been working on that. But, you know, it's one of those things that like I can totally understand, you know, not wanting to dedicate a resource of, you know, making dresses like equipable on men for probably, you know, what subfraction of the audience will ever interact with that, right? I just don't really know, you know, what that looks like, honestly. And so I kind of understand that thing with it. But I personally just like as much freedom as possible with my characters. So for me, it's like, hey, just let me make my character look however I want. Like that's the big thing. And so I think I'm leaning more towards just like, hey, if you want to set a gender option, you can have it, and I'll say if you're male or female. But otherwise, just like let me make my character look however I want to make them look, or make them look. So, but yeah, a lot of games don't abide by those rules. A lot of games will give like 2 times more hairstyles for females. You get games, you know, it's not so much these days, but like, you know, Phantasy Star Online back in the day. You know, generally it felt like the female characters got more weapons than the male characters and things like that were gender specific. And they were just like funner weapons. Like, you know, you get the little like nurse bag and stuff like that. I think there's like the Nay's call. I don't know, the Phantasy Star Online lady, or Phantasy Star lady that has the purple hair. She had like her claw. So there's like they're just like funner like weapons and stuff where the guys are like, oh, you got stag cutterly. It's like a red saber. Cool, thanks. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I it's a game by game thing. I will usually pop up both options and look and evaluate a game and say, what is this game doing with its outfits and stuff like that. With his or outfits, unfortunately, you can't really tell ahead of time most of the time. But like hairstyles, things like that, you can kind of figure out how much the game's gonna care about you as a male character, because it's just not a guarantee that you're gonna get the options that you want. It's something that Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, that game, while it actually was like pretty liberal on the male character customization, most of the outfits in that game were female only, kind of understandably, because they're like, here's the outfit from all the characters in the show. We released that outfit, but it's a female only outfit because, like, you know, most of the characters in Sword Art Online are females because it's like a harem anime, right? With one dude and like 20 women. So it's like, it's understandable. But the guys got cool jackets. So, so there was gender specific outfits in there, but it's just like it was off balanced for different reasons. So I definitely just had the mind, like, if you can afford to do it, just go ahead and, like, you know, make it so everybody can equip everything and let people just customize their character however they want to customize their character. And but otherwise, you know, if all those factors are out of the place, it is literally just 50-50, you know, what am I feeling kind of thing. I did notice that I think when I play more realistic games, I will typically lean towards like a female character versus a male character. But I feel like when I play more like anime games, I will typically lean towards a male character. Anyways, I don't know, but but yes, that's it for that though. Thank you so much for asking that question. I appreciate it. Thank you again, everybody, for contributing to the Patreon. I'm gonna probably be pushing on the Patreon a bit harder on the YouTube here shortly, and I'm also trying to update the website to formally integrate Patreon content there, because it's been kind of hidden there in a lot of ways. So that's something that I was trying to do this weekend, but the other YouTube stuff got in the way. So unfortunately just didn't really get around to it, but I'll continue to work on that and try to get that put together. Also have like a Patreon style video coming up here that's not truly a Patreon video that's coming out, but I am labeling it as a Patreon unlock because it would have been a Patreon video if I didn't put it out. But I didn't want to, like, you know, put out a free Patreon video and then like not have Patreon content for people who pay. So I basically made 2 Patreon videos and made one free essentially on the normal week. So yes, that's it. Anyways, back to news. This is something I missed last week. And it's kind of funny because like I had a lot of people mention Super Bomberman R2 to me and before the Nintendo Direct, and I was kind of like, I just kind of saw that and was like, oh yeah, okay, some more Super Bomberman R. I have not played Super Bomberman R, to be honest with you, so I don't know much about it. I do know they shut the servers down for the Battle Royale one recently, so people were like scared about that, or I think maybe just for the game in general, not just the Battle Royale one. But R2 was announced, and I have no real thoughts or feelings on it, although I think somebody mentioned to me that it's going to have like a more adventure mode thing, which I'm all for putting adventure modes in your multiplayer focused video game. I like having single player content in multiplayer focused games, so that's why I like Super Smash Bros. Brawl so much, despite the game itself not playing super great. But anyways, or maybe not super great, but outside the standard of what like a Super Smash Bros. Would play like for the most part. Anyways, but instead of what we absolutely had to talk about was Rainbow Bombergirl. Rainbow Bombergirl, really not a lot to say about this beyond it is a new version of Bombergirl coming out. It is going to have new classes and things like that added in, so that's neat. I'm going to guess they're going to add some other stuff in there as well. But basically, it's just a version update for Bombergirl. That franchise has been going on for quite a while now, so it makes sense to do like a little refresh. I still am hoping someday there's going to be a more reasonable way to play that in the US, but probably not going to happen. You know, it is. I think it largely is at round 1s in Japan, so I would like for it to show up at round 1s in the US, but maybe just too horny for that. Understandably, maybe. And this is not really a huge deal, but Chase Jokers, which seems like it's probably from the same developers as Bombergirl. Also arcade game, but it's like 3 characters chasing after one character who gets a key and like unlocks a door, I think, is if I recall the general concept. They had like a second play test recently. It was on July 8th, and I think it's at a round 1 in Akihabara or something like that. So, or maybe it wasn't Akihabara. It's in a round 1 somewhere. I don't remember exactly where. But they had a second play test for that as well. So there is this weird situation that I was not really aware of that happened recently with an Alicesoft developer. The situation itself, I don't think happened recently. I think this game that they put out came out a while ago. So if you don't know Alicesoft, they're a company who are known for, I guess you could say, pornographic video games, like the Rant series, I believe, is one of their things. They also put out another game recently. I forget what it was called, but one of the characters is literally just named like porno in it. But it's a hentai game series. They make video games with erotic content in it. And so a fellow from Alicesoft, I don't know his full name, but his Twitter name is Imayui, apparently left Alicesoft and made his own company called I am YUIC, and they're a spin-off company, but they put out a game in 2020 called Hentai Labyrinth. So as you can expect, it is a dungeon crawler with hentai elements on it. And they put that out, and it was actually in like collaboration with Alicesoft, it seems like. But their second game that they started making, which is called Terminus Historia, Alicesoft essentially has dropped support for that game. So they went to Campfire to do crowdfunding for it. They already met their goal for it and everything. But it's actually, from as far as I can tell, it is a all ages kind of RPG game with like a fairly cute, amateurish kind of art style behind it. Definitely doesn't have like the polish of like Hentai Labyrinth. And it looks kind of like like very much mid development of like some of the character art looks really nice. Some of it looks a lot more like somebody sketched out something fairly quickly kind of thing. But basically they went to go crowdfunding for it. I think they were asking for like $1,000 or something really low. Let me see here. Let me do some Japanese number math real quick here. Yeah, they're asking for like $1,000, and I think they got like $4,000. So, you know, they're not asking for huge numbers of money here, but they're putting out a fairly, you know, almost RPG Maker looking kind of game. I think it uses something called like Dragon something, some kind of engine. I can't find what it's running on, but I think it's like one of those available RPG engines that you can just like, you know, create an RPG in with that kind of thing. So it's got kind of a cute look to it, and I like a lot of the character designs, but it does look very amateurish in a lot of ways, but I think a lot of people can appreciate that these days, that kind of art style. I believe it is going to be free to play based off the comments on here. It's machine translated, I will say, so I don't know for sure, but they call it the free scenario RPG. So that may or may not be accurate. I don't know about that, but you know, they're essentially starting up their own little thing, which is kind of neat. I don't know how many people are there, but you know, for only about $1,000 to finish their video game, I'd imagine it's probably not a ton of people working on it. But they're still, I think, pretty early on in their campaign funding. I think they launched on like July 1st, so they still have the rest of the month to go. But I thought it was an interesting little thing. I did not know that this dude broke off from Alicesoft and was just making games on his own, so that's kind of neat. I don't know exactly who he is at the company. I think he was listed as a game director at Alicesoft there. So I don't know if he has like any big titles he's worked on in the past that people would recognize. But I just thought it was like an interesting little thing that happened. And, you know, I'm not the person to really give you the big lowdown of what this thing is. But I just thought it was like a fun little like news tidbit that showed up here. And then we have a handful of other like really smaller news stories that we're going to kind of blast through here real quick. Metal Max is changing publishers. So if you don't remember, a couple weeks ago we talked about Metal Max. I think it's called Wild West or something like that. But the sequel to Metal Max, you know, or the next Metal Max game, I guess should probably say rather than sequel, got canceled. And apparently Kadokawa Games is giving up their publishing rights for both Metal Max Xeno, which is the PS4 Metal Max game, and then also Metal Dogs, which is a top-down twin-stick shooter featuring the dogs for the Metal Saga series, with basically you just go around and they have like turret backpacks. And if you don't know anything about Metal Max, it's like a really goofy military shooter kind of, or military JRPG kind of thing. It always is kind of fun. I don't know like if the more recent games are more serious. I don't know enough about Metal Max, unfortunately, but Metal Max Xeno I always kind of read just as like trying a little too hard to be serious at times to me, versus like Metal Saga, which is the one I picked up a while ago, which I have not played still. Just seemed like it's a little more like fun and carefree in some ways, but I haven't played those games, so I can't say for sure. If you're a Metal Max fan, let me know if that franchise has changed at all over the years, but I just never got around to Metal Saga, unfortunately. But anyway, so the developer, Kadokawa Games, sold the publishing rights off to both games to two different publishers, actually. So I don't know what this means for the Metal Max franchise going forward and who owns the IP, but Clouded Leopard Entertainment is picking up Metal Max Xeno, and then 24 Frames is picking up Metal Dogs. Metal Dogs is more of a spin-off title, so if anybody's going to be keeping the franchise long-term out of those two, I'd assume it's Clouded Leopard Entertainment. I had never heard of these guys before. I looked them up, and I was like, when I went to their website, their logo made me think I was on like a college sports team website. It's just like a panther like within like a shield kind of thing. But anyway, so they seem like they're kind of like an Asian region publisher as far as I can tell. So they basically are publishing games not in Japan, but the areas around Japan. So I don't know if they're going to be publishing Metal Max games going forward in Japan specifically or not, but they're at least managing the rights for this particular game. So kind of interesting to see. That's one of those long-running franchises that has been around probably longer than it should have been, and it's kind of crazy it's still there. And it's a shame that it never really has taken off in the West with especially with Metal Max Xeno coming out and the growing appreciation of those kind of games, I feel like here. But I guess now, you know, the question of is Japan sales enough is another thing now, right? Like I guess Kadokawa was not happy enough with them to keep going with it. So This is kind of a fun little weird story about Tango Gameworks. They put out a mobile game called Hero Dice earlier this year, and apparently less than 3 months after that game came out, they are shutting it down with all purchases stopping on June 30th, which I think was the day they announced this, and then the game itself shuts down on August 31st. It's like a gacha-based RPG with like dice elements for mobile, and it's kind of crazy to just see this game pop up and just disappear. It's one of those things that like the industry is so crazy today. These things could just completely pass you by, of like this fairly prevalent developer making this game and then just like passing on it immediately afterwards. So I'm sure some number didn't line up somewhere for them to be like, this is worth trying to salvage or save after the initial launch numbers. But it's crazy to see something like get work done on it, get completed and pushed out, and then just abandoned immediately, basically. So Worth Life is finally getting localized. It's coming out July 14th, so, pretty soon, actually, if you've been listening to this. I think this was one of those things that was announced the week before. I always forget what this game is, but I think it's like a 2D side-scroller with life simulator elements. Very cute look to it. It reminds me a little bit of like a Little King story art style in some ways. It's not exactly, but that's generally what it reminds me of. So this was announced at a Nintendo Direct a while ago, but it was a Japan-only Direct when it was announced. So that's getting localized, which is nice. Custom Robo is being added to Switch Online on July 15th. I think Puzzle League is being added as well on that same day. But that Custom Robo game is only being added to the Japanese Switch Online, it seems like, which is unfortunate because that game never got localized. I really feel like, I don't know if they do this much, but I kind of feel like they should just add all of those games to the Switch service and just be like, hey, this game's an import game, and if you want to try to stumble through it, you can't, buddy, if you want. So, I mean, you can access it, to my understanding, you just have to swap accounts and things like that, but just like, if they just said, hey, we're just launching Custom Robo Switch Online on the US service too, I think that would be fairly reasonable to do. I think they're adding both the first and second game that came out on 64. I picked up Custom Robo on the GameCube, but never played it, unfortunately. And so I'm kind of curious about these particular versions of the game, but I'd rather play the GameCube version at this point. But very cool, that's coming out, and if you have Nintendo Switch Online, I believe you can just make a Japanese account, download that app, and then go check it out. Look into the exact details of that. I don't know 100% how that works, but I believe Vink told me in the past that you can just basically do it without having to subscribe to a Japanese subscription specifically. And then finally, the Wii and DSiWare shops are back online. It's been a while. Unsurprisingly, Nintendo probably does not care that much about these shops. You cannot buy anything from them still. You can only download games you've already purchased. So it is just there for you to reclaim your digital rights for it, essentially, if you need to. So, but yeah, I'm surprised they even bothered to bring it up online, to be honest with you. I kind of would figure they would just be like, all right, sucks for you guys at this point. But yeah, I mean, good on Nintendo for bringing it back, because I think if I were running Nintendo and I had to make a decision like that, I'd just be like, I don't know, just shut it down. But maybe it's one of those things that it was a fairly minor fix, and it just was a matter of finding the time to get someone to do it. So I was like, well, why not, kind of thing. So fairly cool. Anyways, that's it for this week. Very news-heavy week this week. I don't really know what my plans for this week are, to be honest with you. I'm pretty sure I'll be playing some more Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles. But I probably should play more games, but if I do, it's going to be Farland Story. And when we're streaming, it's going to be One Piece Unlimited Adventure. I don't know what we're going to talk about the next couple weeks, guys. Just letting you know, it's going to be a rough. I don't know what I'm trying to say with that. But yeah, we'll see how things go. I don't know if there's anything specific coming up that I'm like, hey, we can chat about whatever. But still, I think this is a pretty hefty amount of news here, so I'm pretty happy with this, even if some of it was fairly old. But I think it's old stuff that was interesting to look at the very least. So anyways, thank you guys for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. Again, if you are watching this on YouTube, there's an audio version of this where you can go watch that or listen to that. If you go to Anchor FM, I'm on there. And you basically can download OneControlPort for a majority of podcast services out there, or a large number of the most popular ones. So if you just want the audio version, feel free to go there for that. YouTube version has audio of me sitting here talking with a Japanese grandpa in the background with an explosion and Bombergirl in the middle of it. So if you want to stare at that for, however long this podcast is, there's a way you can do that on youtube.com. As I mentioned, the YouTube has been reorganized. So if you are like, hey, Ben, I want to go into your backlog and see more stuff, definitely recommend going and checking out there. Again, any feedback on that stuff is always helpful. I'm always kind of just like guessing blind on a lot of these things. Like, I think this is helpful, kind of thing. Last week we had the Galaxy Farland Yuna English guide video that came out. So if you can go check that out, I would appreciate it, and share it if you have people you think it would be relevant to. A lot of subscribers recently. I don't know where they came from. I was looking into the analytics of it, and they just kind of be like for a bunch of different videos, not like the PCFX specific stuff. So I don't really know what happened, but I got a lot of subscribers. So if you're new, thanks for joining us. And thanks for coming along on this journey with us. And then we'll be getting back to One Piece again on Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. If you want to come check that out, that's a weird One Piece game. It's a weird video game in general, I think, for a 2007 Wii game. So it's kind of a fascinating thing to look at. Maybe not the most entertaining game to watch, but I think a really fascinating game to play. So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you again. I hope you have a great week. Bye.